it had kind of come to a head, some of the guilt and depression, and I needed to do something to kind of prove to myself that I wanted and deserved to be here. I needed a big challenge to prove I was still capable of something like this. And it was very important to me to honor the friends I lost by living instead of isolating and not wanting to be here. And then having lost friends to suicide, knowing that there's 22 a day that are doing this and that I was so close myself, it was kind of a personal, intimate testimony to that too. A lot of people didn't know that we were losing 22 veterans a day. It's a lot. It's so many. I mean, you fight so hard to get back. And I would describe it as the war inside is just totally different than the ones we were trained to win.
That's Sarah Lee, and this is the Rich Roll Podcast. The Rich Roll Podcast. Hey everybody, how you guys doing? What's happening? This is indeed the podcast. Welcome or welcome back. You are in the right place. So pull up a seat. It's cool. Get comfortable. You can come closer. Come on, slide up. Get in the front. Get in the listening mode. Pay attention. There you go. Good. Because today we're going to talk about an important subject. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to explore post-traumatic stress, PTSD, what it's like to be so at war with oneself, to be lost in such a darkness that suicide feels like the only option. And we're going to discuss the path to healing. And our steward for this exchange is Iraq War combat veteran Sarah Lee. And I'm going to explain all about who she is and why. But first, let's support the sponsors that make these important conversations possible. Today's episode is brought to you by a brand new sponsor, another one. Super excited about this one. I really am. Jaybird, premium sound Bluetooth headphones, perfect for athletes, runners, and fitness fanatics. So as the listening audience of a largely health and fitness-based podcast, I don't think I need to tell you about the importance of a good pair of headphones for running or working out or training. I mean, come on, right? I'm sure there are a ton of you right now working out as you're listening to this. And for me, training time can be this amazing, fantastic time to expand your mind or glean inspiration, not only from music, but podcasts like this one, audiobooks. We all love audiobooks. And what makes Jaybird headphones so great is, first of all, they have incredible sound. They even have this customizable EQ with their app, so you can dial in all the levels exactly the way that you like them. They have a secure, ultra comfortable fit for almost any ear size and shape, and even a sweat and waterproof model, the IPX7, for maximum durability. I've been using their Run True Wireless headphones for quite a while now, and as somebody who has never been able to find buds that actually fit snugly into my ear and stay there no matter how much my head shakes or how much I sweat, which is a lot, I'm telling you, these headphones have been a game changer for me. The connectivity with my phone is seamless. The sound quality is amazing, and the button technology is super easy and intuitive. Plus, they just released an update to their true wireless line called Run XT, which is now sweat and waterproof. Again, those are the IPX7s. Jaybird is state-of-the-art tech designed by their team of hardcore athletes, runners, and cyclists up in Park City, Utah, all of whom are maniacally focused on building the best wireless headphones for athletes. And right now, my listeners can receive 20% off a pair of the just released Run XT true wireless headphones, plus free shipping through the end of March. Limit one pair per customer. This is an incredible deal. And to get it, go to jaybirdsport.com and use the promo code RICHROLL at checkout to take advantage of this offer. That's jaybirdsport.com, promo code RICHROLL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Outerknown, sustainable coastal menswear made for all your adventures. It is one thing for clothes to be stylish and to fit great, and it's another thing for them to be durable. But what about sustainably made? What about environmentally friendly? That's the thing I'm increasingly more and more interested in, and the conversation that we really need to be having. And from experience, I can tell you that it is the rare garment brand indeed that can check all of these boxes, which is why I'm just so happy to tell you about Outerknown, essentially super styling garments made with integrity. I've got a bunch of their t-shirts that I love, a pair of white jeans that are super dope, but my favorite item so far is this gray denim jacket that I wear pretty much every day. And it just feels good to know all of it was made in a manner consistent with my values, which is the whole idea behind why Kelly Slater, the pro surfer guy, founded the company to begin with, to create the most high vibe clothes possible, clothes that won't harm the environment. Outerknown only works with factories that provide safe working conditions and pay fair living wages. Denim, people, it's one of the filthiest manufacturing processes that exists in apparel. So Outerknown went out and found the cleanest denim factory in the world to produce its line. A solar-powered facility. It's in Vietnam, where they harvest rainwater, they air dry 85% of their jeans, they recycle 98% of the water used in development, and then they take that remaining 2% and they turn it into sludge used to make building bricks. How effing cool is that? Plus, Outerknown uses organic cotton, which conserves 90% more water compared to conventional cotton, which is responsible for 25% of the world's total pesticide use. Even their buttons are made from recycled ocean plastics. I'm telling you, people. So check them out today. Go to outerknown.com and enter my code RICHROLL at checkout, and you'll get 25% off your full price order. That's outerknown.com, outerknown.com. And remember to use my code RICHROLL at checkout for 25% off. outerknown.com, code RICHROLL, 25% off. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Eero, because life is too short for bad Wi-Fi. We've had an Eero for about a year, and it's been a game changer. No more dead zones, significantly faster connection, and zero issues no matter how many people in my house are streaming, which I'm telling you used to be a huge deal. And now the new Eero second generation and Eero Beacon offer more speed and range in the same high quality, elegant design that people have come to expect. In fact, the second generation Eero is twice as fast as its predecessor, which lets customers do more simultaneously in every room of their home. Now the Eero Plus is designed to provide simple, reliable security that defends all your home's devices against a growing number of threats like malware, spyware, phishing attacks, as well as unsuitable content. The combination of Eero with Eero Plus provides complete protection for your network and all of your devices, and those who use them as they connect to the internet. So what is included? Total network protection. Eero Plus offers the ability to block malicious and unwanted content across your entire network. Advanced security, content blocking, ad blocking, improved load times for ad-heavy sites, plus third-party security apps, VPN protection from EncryptMe, password management from 1Password, and antivirus software from Malwarebytes. Basically, everything you need. And right now, you can get $100 off the Eero base unit and 2 beacons package and 1 year of Eero Plus when you go to eero.com/richroll. And at checkout, enter promo code RICHROLL. That's eero.com/RICHROLL, promo code RICHROLL. Okay, let's get into it. Combat veteran Sarah Lee. So Sarah is a former Army sergeant who served 8 years in the military, including a 14-month deployment to Iraq in 2004 for Operation Iraqi Freedom 2. After which she retires from the military, she returns to civilian life, and then begins to really struggle to reacclimate to some semblance of normality. She suffers from chronic pain. She finds herself increasingly more and more isolating from friends and family. She begins emotionally eating. She develops this grapefruit-sized ovarian cyst that leads to a full hysterectomy. It's basically one thing after another until she finds herself 100 pounds overweight and descending into this very dark depression that becomes so bleak that in April of 2017, she very nearly takes her own life. And the absolutely bone-chilling part about our conversation is this. The very same day, in fact, at the exact same time that Sarah and I recorded this conversation, which was a fair while ago. It was the afternoon of November 7th of last year, several months ago. There just so happened to be another military veteran, a machine gunner who had spent time in Afghanistan, literally just miles from my home, just down the road in the next town over, who was also suffering from some very, very dark thoughts. Sarah Lee found a healthy way out, a healthy way forward, but 28-year-old Ian David Long did not. Just hours after Sarah and I concluded our conversation, and just 13 miles away, this young man pulls out a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol with a laser sight and opens fire on a crowd of mostly 20-somethings, people just enjoying themselves at the Borderline Grill in Thousand Oaks. And he ultimately kills 12 people before fatally shooting himself. And I think the confluence of these two events really underscores and emphasizes the severe gravity of our mental health epidemic, that PTSD is a very serious issue. Somewhere between 11 and 20% of all Iraq war veterans suffer from it, 30% of Vietnam vets, something like 22 veterans take their own lives every single day, which is, it's just horrifically insane. War, of course, takes its toll. But I think it's incumbent upon all of us to better address the undeniably significant psychological effects that we ask our brave men and women to endure. Sarah's healing begins with a bicycle. And this is a story about many things, but ultimately I think it's about courage. It's about healing, and it's about redemption. And I think I'm just going to leave it there and let Sarah tell you the rest. Well, thank you for being here today. Congratulations on your epic bike ride across America.
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear a little bit more about it. And explore the connection between fitness and adventure and mental well-being, which I think is super important. You finished the ride in July, right?
I finished in September.
Oh, in September.
Yes,
oh, it's
September
more recent
3rd
than I thought. Wow.
Labor Day.
That's right. Oh, you started again. You resumed it in yeah.
June,
okay,
yes,
right.
yes. I had to start again June 2nd.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're here. We're going to talk about all this kind of stuff. Your story is super inspiring. What you've overcome and what you decide to tackle, and kind of what I think is most important is what it means for the rest of us. So, to set the stage, to provide a little context, why don't we go all the way back to the beginning, right? So you end up enlisting, right, at like a pretty young age.
Yes, I joined the Army National Guard at age 17. My parents had to co-sign.
What was the motivation? Like, was that something you always wanted to do?
I always wanted to do something like that. It was between the military or possibly the FBI. I looked into both, and I just felt a little more of a calling toward the military. I always wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. I craved a challenge constantly. I played sports and everything, and I really enjoy the physical challenge, the mental challenge, to see how far I can push myself and push others too.
Did you grow up in a military family? You have brothers and sisters?
I have one sister. No, to answer your question, no. I have two great uncles that served. One was a full bird colonel in the Army. He's an intelligence officer, a communications officer. He actually participated. He had a hand in the moon landing. He had a signed thing from NASA and all these things. And it was amazing. He didn't he was very soft-spoken and didn't talk very much about it. So I don't know a lot of the details. He probably couldn't. But aside from that, I don't know of of any other.
Yeah, it was really just your thing.
But it wasn't a shock, I don't think, because I was always very outdoorsy, and I liked roughing it. I liked camping and being in nature, playing with every animal I could find, and I was always fascinated by the outdoors and pushing myself in different ways. So it just fit. It fit really well.
And your parents were cool with it and everything?
Yes and no. My mom couldn't sign it. She had my dad do it. She's like, I couldn't possibly do it. But they were extremely supportive and very proud. Like, that's my ultimate goal, always to make my parents proud. And they've always been supportive of my dreams and everything like that.
Yeah.
So
you grew up in Ohio, right?
Yes, yeah, North Central Ohio.
So once you sign on the dotted line, like, what happens? How does it work?
Well, I was still in high school. I had to wait to graduate to go to basic training. And so you go off to basic training, and
where'd you do that?
It was Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And they kind of just break you down and build you back up, which is a wonderful experience. I almost feel like you get you get to start life steps further, just based on knowing your personal limitations or not knowing them, or wondering if you even have them. At the end of it, you're like, is there nothing I can't push myself to do or something? I don't know. It equips you with all these skill sets right out of the gate. You have to learn things very quickly, and the leadership aspect, stepping up, and then the bonds you form in there, being kind of a team. You don't really recognize color in a way, except for you wear green and you bleed red, and those are the only two colors that should matter. And we're a unit, and you jump in front of a bullet for one another. It's this really cool bond, foundation, and camaraderie that you gain right off the bat. You're introduced to all these things so early.
I think it's something that we don't really have in our culture, with the exception of playing sports, which is, a facsimile of that, but a situation in which the stakes are, not nearly as high, of course.
No, it gets intense with sport. It's a lot like sports. It's also a lot like, I think, the medical field, especially like paramedics, nurses, doctor. The medical field is firemen, police. There's a lot of similarities between those careers too, and you really bond quickly over intense situations. I think that's what makes that bond so solid and so profound, is the intensity of the situations that you're in. And
what is the boot camp experience like? In, my only point of reference is what I see in movies and TV, right? Is it like that? Is it? Honestly, pretty much. It really is there. At least when I was in, it may have changed. I went to boot camp 2001. And they get right in your face and scream. And now they can't, maybe throw you to the ground and things like that, or throw things at you. But they can sling some pretty harsh, strings of words. What month? I mean, was it before or after September 11th?
Oh, I joined prior to September 11th, shortly before. So I'd completed basic and everything. I was actually attending college when September 11th happened. And then they did the initial infiltration the next year, 2002, 2003, I received a call that my unit was going to be activated. So.
Right. So you're deployed to Iraq.
Yes.
For Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Yes,
right?
2004. For 12 months.
So explain to me that experience.
Well, you grow up very quickly. I thought basic training shot me ahead, but I turned 21 over there. So you just have to figure things out really quickly. And it's actually amazing how fast you adjust to it, and how quickly the environment and the sounds and the smells all become kind of normal. And it was an intense year. It definitely was. And
what was a day in the life like when you were deployed?
It varied. It did vary drastically. I would say on average, let's say when I maybe did guard duty on the perimeter or something like that, it was 12-hour shifts. I did the night shift. And
what's a shift? Like, what are you doing on a shift?
You basically, it was like static security. You'd sit with the M249, the squad automatic weapon, and there was different sights you would use with the thermal, things like that, because it was night. You would just, make sure everything is safe. No one's coming in and things like that. And Every day was different, but the same. But there was always like the worry that either you would be killed or your friends would be. So it was very high intensity. Mm-hmm. I think that's a lot of why we remember every second of it. I think when your senses are all heightened, you absorb things differently. It's so permanent. Like, I can't remember what I maybe did a week ago, but I remember,
right,
like every single
cemented in your head
detail.
Forever.
Right. So, but yeah, it was the year went by quickly, and we spent so long downplaying it that I guess we just kind of make light of the deployment sometimes when we get back
almost
and things, because we don't really want to have to paint the picture for people sometimes.
But as almost a survival mechanism for yourself, right? If you downplay it, then perhaps the toll it's taking on you isn't real.
That is very true.
Or isn't as intense as what is actually happening.
Yeah, it's like when you don't feel well, but you don't say anything, mm-hmm. and you can kind of control it, or it doesn't become real. And then when you say something, it's like, okay, now I really don't feel well, like physically, mm-hmm. And maybe that's part of the fear of talking about some of the things, is we don't want some of the things we're dealing with to be real. Or yeah, that's a really great way to look at it. That's very true.
And when you're there, I would imagine that you lost some colleagues, right?
Yes, that was probably the biggest factor for some of my issues is the fact that we had to come home without everybody. I was particularly close to one of the soldiers that was killed over there. And so there's definitely an aspect of guilt that mm-hmm. you carry. And some days are probably heavier than others, I would say. And sometimes you don't think about it for a while, and then you'll see something, and it really does, I think, build over time, which is a big part of what led me to ultimately doing this cycling trip. It was a combination of, do I deserve to be here or deserve good things, mixed with feeling guilty about that because I'm not living and honoring my friend's sacrifice by isolating.
Yeah.
I began isolating quite a bit over the last decade, I would say. So
yeah, and I want to
all tied in.
I want to really understand PTSD and how it impacted you and what it's all about. But I think I'm still trying to understand what you endured while you were overseas, to help me kind of wrap my head around what it would be like to come home and live with that. Like, were you on patrols? Were you like on the front? Like, was there just constant bomb? Like, paint me the picture of like the experience of being in Iraq at that moment.
Yes, it varies person to person. I think my biggest things are low, loud booms, I would say, because we would have, mortars and mm-hmm. artillery and stuff come in almost daily, close enough to where it would, shake the buildings and things like that.
On the base.
Yes, yeah. I was at Camp Spiker near Tikrit, Iraq. Uh-huh. So anything that's kind of like a low boom, I just kind of pause, because usually it wouldn't just be one, and you would just kind of pause and listen and wait and stuff. And then you get mad at yourself because you're home and it's not a mortar, Sarah, right. Chill out, and other things, like in particular, my rotation, it was one of the first rotations with women, and there was $1 million bond on the head of any female soldier captured. And we were kind of briefed on this, when we got there. And so there's like an element of paranoia and in the back of my mind, I think in the very back, because I loved everyone I served, I trusted them with my life. In the very back of your mind, it's like $1 million is a lot of money too. Yeah. So it's
every
like you don't know.
Every time you leave the base on patrol or whatever, you're the high value
even on
target.
there.
Even on the base.
Because, we would have Iraqis come in and do certain tasks on there.
Right.
On the base and everything. So
was that part of trying to train the Iraqi army so they could be self-sufficient? Or
not when I was there, not where I was. It was more kind of like different jobs around the base that they would do. So they were definitely intermixed with us here and there. And
you're not, you don't, I mean, conceivably they're cleared somehow to come on the base, but you're always questioning, dual motives or whatnot.
Yes, very much so. So I think the hypervigilance and that kind of level of paranoia, I would say, well, it's kind of a strong, I kind of watch everything, And that's another reason why I just started staying at home.
You're super aware of everything all the time, which has to be,
it's exhausting. That's a lot of why I started staying at home a lot too. I was just getting fatigued from all of it. And also,
was there ever a moment where, you were super in harm's way?
Yes, there was one, a rocket, like a full rocket, came into the camp and landed in the front yard of the building that I was typically in. I was a street back at the time, and it was like the loudest thing that I've ever heard. I mean, people have taken roadside bombs right next to them, so that's different. But that rocket coming in, it didn't kill anybody. Miraculously, it didn't fully detonate. So they had, the guys come in and disarm it and take it away and everything. But it came right in. There was a crater. I took a photo and video of it and everything. And I was like, this is the building I work in. Here's where the rocket came in. It's like right there.
Fully deploy, right? So what would it, I mean, it had it then.
I'm trying to think the kill radius on it. It would have killed a lot. I think a lot of people had it fully detonated. But the crater itself was huge. It was the loudest thing ever.
Right.
So I think that's where the low, loud booms kind of bother me and stuff like that.
Does that still happen? Like if you pull up to a car that's playing a lot of bass?
No. Well, if I know what it is, it's fine. I think it's just like
surprise.
As fast as possible, figuring out what the sound is and what it means and things like that. If you can make sense of what it is, it's like, okay, fine. And usually you can do that pretty quickly, just things like that. But yeah, I guess it's really a combination of these types of things and then kind of missing it also, the intensity, the bond over there that you form and you hold with these people. And then you come home and I deployed with the National Guard unit, the combat engineers. And so when we got back, we kind of went to our respective units. I got pulled from my current unit to go with this other unit. So I didn't know them, but I got to know them quickly and they were awesome. It was a really well put together unit. And so we got home and then went our separate ways. And so you kind of lose touch a little bit too. And so I moved down to Nashville 8 years ago, and then I didn't see anybody I served with anymore. And so I also made the mistake of not becoming involved with organizations that were in place, like the VFW, American Legion, AMVETS, those sorts of things. I didn't do it. And I think a lot of us maybe make similar mistakes, just not continuing to try to.
Did you have a sense that you were suffering from PTSD, or were you trying to pretend that you weren't, or did you think you were fine? Like when you first got back, what was that, emotionally, what did that feel like? Like, did you feel like you were in trouble and this needed to be dealt with, or were you just trying to, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and move on with your life?
I think it was both, but it was a very quick out processing. Like, they're like, are you good? All right, cool. Are you good? Okay, cool. So, and then we go home. I think I would like to believe I was fine and everything. I know I felt like maybe I didn't relate with people so much. And I also, avoided questions, not because they were maybe too painful to answer or something like that, but it takes so much to even paint the picture and then go into the story or go into the experience, good or bad, really. And then you kind of only share some of those connections with the people that you were physically there with. And so if you don't see them all the time anymore, you start to feel kind of alienated. Yeah. And then you start, isolating.
A big part of that is a normal reaction, right? Like if you're in a super intense situation and then it ends, there's going to be, an acclimation period to that. So the issue then becomes, when does it tip over into a persistent trauma that is festering beneath the surface? When you explain that, I keep thinking about that scene in The Hurt Locker where Jeremy Renner is like at the grocery store when he gets back, and it's very simple in its aesthetic, but it's so powerful because you realize like he's looking at products on the shelf and he just can't relate to anything because, he's used to a completely different way of living his life. And now suddenly, like overnight, that's all changed and he's supposed to just acclimate to normal civilian existence. And of course that's, close to impossible for a lot of people, I would imagine, for anybody, really.
That aspect was actually coming back and waiting in line at a grocery store and people complaining about standing waiting in line or like you said, those kinds of little things. It's like, do you know how bad it could actually be? Like, do you have any idea how good you have it? Like those kinds of thoughts come in, I think, shortly after you get home or right away. I think they kind of fade as you get more used to those comforts again, but you kind of, and eventually you almost kind of crave having nothing again. That's another reason why this bike trip was so amazing too, was the simplicity, the lack of things, making something out of nothing, having that challenge. And, I think that comfort and convenience leave very little room for appreciation. And you really realize what you do have. I think the less you have, the more you feel you have, or the more you're likely to give, or something like that. There's something to that.
Well, it's this weird, confusing soup, like I imagine, because on the one hand, you have this sense of gratitude for how good we have it after having an experience like that. And then at the same time, to be suffering, I would imagine, kind of enhances the feelings of confusion and guilt, right? Because you're like, it's so good and I'm back here and I'm safe and everything's fine. So why do I feel terrible?
Right. Or I think one of my biggest problems that I was facing regularly was, why am I here and my friends aren't? That kind of thing. Or it should have been me, that sort of thing. And you don't have to have been deployed to combat or even be a military veteran to understand that. That happens. It can happen to anyone, anytime, losing someone, and that survivor's guilt, they call it. But that was a huge factor for me, was the guilt of coming home without that. We lost 3. So
yeah. So when you come back, is there a process by which you are funneled through, like the Veterans Administration, to have you checked out to make sure that you're mentally sound? Like, how does all of that work, and how do so many people fall through the cracks? Like, what is not working? What's broken? And, what would you fix if you could?
Well, I think ultimately, it comes down to the person being forthcoming with some of the problems, but we don't tend to do that.
Yeah.
And I know
I'm trained to
not to complain, you know? Yes. Yeah, definitely. And so I think that they have a system in place, but maybe it's not as persistent. If you have a conversation with a veteran, sometimes it takes several of those interactions to even scratch the surface of maybe what they're thinking or feeling, especially if maybe they feel like they could have done more or should have done more. That's the last thing they want people to know about, is they don't want to be judged for not having done more severe things, let alone have someone know that they feel these, that they have these issues based on having not done as much as they feel they should or could have, which is almost never the case. We all do everything we can. We follow orders, to the best of our ability. We would never want to come home without anybody. But yeah, that the guilt aspect, I think, exists in every combat vet that has been deployed with a unit that comes home without somebody from every war. That's across the board an issue.
Yeah. Well, the statistics are pretty shocking. Every day, 22 vets take their lives. I mean, it's so incredibly disheartening to hear that. And as somebody who has no military experience, my only basis of understanding is what I read in the news or what I kind of, come across here and there. And my sense, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Veterans Administration is overwhelmed. There's too many people. It's not adequately staffed, and soldiers either don't avail themselves of those services, or those services become they're unavailable, or they have to wait forever to get an appointment. And because they're overwhelmed, it's very much a a way of just getting prescribed medication. So you have all of these veterans who are over-medicated, walking around, that then contributes to this opioid crisis that we're experiencing right now without really getting to the root cause or a healthy protocol for crawling out of this hole that so many people are experiencing.
Yes, it is. It comes down to it's mainly two things. It's an individual responsibility to seek the help, and then having everything in place just so to facilitate the help needed. So, do they have therapists and things like that? Yes, they do.
And how many people actually take advantage of that?
Now, I'm not sure about that. I know that I personally went. The VA has, they have psychologists, psychiatrists. I was never really into the one-on-one kind of counseling. Sometimes it's difficult for me to funnel my thoughts into words and everything, and paint that picture like I mentioned. And so I rather kind of I think it's the most helpful thing is to be around other veterans and socialize with other veterans, but that if you're isolating, that's not possible. But back to the VA, they do have that in place. They have counselors and a whole network of help for that. So while they do prescribe, they're I think quick to prescribe, the maybe pain medication or like the mood lightener type of medications and everything like that. They also have all the other options in place too. They even have activities you can do, but that's there. I think it's really, for me, it was actually going there and admitting that I'm doing these things, feeling all these things and all that. I didn't want to, because it becomes real, like you said earlier.
Yeah, because if you admit it, then you actually have to confront it. Right,
and then there's labels on stuff and there's categories. I didn't want to be lumped into something. It's like, no, I got this. I'm totally in control, and that control just sometimes it just sneaks away from you, and then kind of the darkness kind of swoops in here and there, and that's kind of what was happening to me and what did happen, which is another big reason I kind of left on my journey.
Right. Yeah. My sense is that there are a lot of veterans who, because they're trained to compartmentalize and sort of, just take care of business, it makes it less likely that they're going to seek that help. And, as the longer you try to repress that kind of trauma, it's going to come out sideways one way or the other. It's either going to come in the form of depression or suicidal ideation or domestic violence or drug addiction or alcoholism. Like it will manifest at some point. And in your case, the gestation period was quite a long period of time. It's not like you wrestled with this right away. You just did your bike trip. You were deployed in 2003. It's been, quite a journey for you to get to this place.
I didn't think I was wrestling with it, like you said. I called my journey a vicious cycle because obviously it's a bicycle, but there's been
these
other.
It's a great name, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's like there's all these other meanings. I've been through some vicious cycles, and it was a mixture of maybe bad decisions and really good decisions that didn't feel like fulfilling enough or feel like enough. And
what do you mean by that?
Now, when I first got back, basically I began emotionally eating, I would say. And I totally abused food. I really did. When I got out of the service in 2009, it became kind of an answer to everything. It wasn't drugs. I drank a bit, but it was the food. I equated it with every emotion, and it was my punishment, my reward. It was everything. And I gained 100 pounds after I got out.
I read that. That's crazy.
And that was definitely part of it. Is I was this strong, capable machine of a person. How could I let this happen? And it just spiraled down so fast. Now that I got a grip on, I met another combat veteran. She owned a gym and she helped me lose, her workouts were basically boot camp. They were boot camp. Right. And I lost the 100 pounds in a year in 2012.
By working out and just eating right and
Correct,
taking care of
yes.
yourself. So you had, enough sense about you to address that
Right.
situation. What was going on inside, like emotionally?
When I became heavier, took control of it, or just
Both.
I guess I didn't. Part of it was I didn't have to. I had the accountability wasn't in place anymore. I had my neck started hurting about halfway through my deployment. I started getting these kind of shooting pains up the back of my head, and so it worsened more and more. My knees were pretty banged up from wear and tear, and those were worsening too.
What caused the neck pain?
It wasn't an isolated incident. It was just, I don't know if it was like the Kevlar, the bouncing. It just became really painful like halfway through. And then I got some help while I was over there, but really I didn't complain too much about it. And eventually it had become worse. I was encouraged to talk about it with my leadership and everything. And so they did an eval and ended up marking me non-deployable. So I wasn't even able to deploy with my unit again.
That's why you didn't go back for a second tour.
Right. I ended up I would have been a lifer. I loved the military.
Yeah.
I've said before, it's the one thing that's ever made complete sense in my life. And it's been very difficult to try to fill that gap since getting out. Because I really did love it. It was definitely my calling.
Well, and your life's very regimented. They tell you where to go and everything is very structured for you.
You don't have to really do too much of your own thinking. Here's what you eat.
They don't encourage a lot of that, do they?
No.
Yeah.
No. And so it's highly discouraged, in fact.
Yeah.
But I got out. I didn't have the accountability in place. And it's such a normal social thing to do is eat, but you can't hide it forever like some other things. You can visually tell someone's got some problems.
Yeah, and the weird
that.
thing is that you're somebody who was trained to be super disciplined, right? And you're all about that.
And capable.
Living in a very regimented way, and then that just falls apart.
I was supposed to be very capable and strong. It was never about being it wasn't ever a superficial or reason for being in shape. It was like, you're supposed to be able to do these things and do these things when needed and help others and keep others safe. And so I let that go, and I just got really down on myself, obviously. And then I kept it, as a reaction to being down, it was food. So,
right.
But like you said, I did those, like a high intensity full body workout 5 days a week and just ate really clean, no sugar, lower carb kind of a thing like that. It was very.
You lose the 100 pounds. It takes like a year. So you did it right. You've kept it off.
For the most part.
Well, you look great. But the interesting thing is that didn't necessarily solve your major malfunction, which is addressing the underlying trauma.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure it elevated your mood and helped you in many different ways, but it wasn't necessarily a cure to the main thing that you were contending with that was driving the emotional eating to begin with.
Yes. It was that lack of fulfillment. I think that sense of purpose that I gained from serving, I couldn't achieve it anymore. And I started a photography business in 2005 when I was still in Ohio, and I continued it to Nashville, and I had that, and it's going fine too. I still do it. I love it, and I like bringing that joy to people, capturing their moments and everything. And part of me is like, you never know when you're going to lose someone. It's really important to get these photos for these people, so that makes me do better at my job also. It's kind of a morbid angle because you never know when you'll lose someone, but photography became very important to me, and it was a great outlet, a healthy outlet, just like working out. And after a while, my passion was dwindling from these things. Working out became a passion, and the reason I had to kind of stop working out is I had to have a major surgery in 2016, and so
right. This is like a big deal, though. Explain it. Tell me.
Sorry. I downplay everything.
Yeah, I know. Come on. We got time here. I want to hear the details. We kind of glossed over your deployment, too. Tell us what it was really like. Like, I know you were diagnosed with a grapefruit-sized cyst in your ovaries, right? Like,
yes.
That's no small thing.
It was it was huge. So, but it was attached to one of my ovaries, and there was also a cancer scare involved. And so they said the best case scenario, I would lose an ovary. The worst case is I do have cancer, that I have to do a full hysterectomy and then remove part of the lining of like my heart and lung or something like that. It was really bizarre. It was like so drastic. I had to sign off on all these different scenarios, but this was Thanksgiving of 2016. And so I was in really great shape then. And I was helping other people lose weight. And my accountability was being there for others than helping them, which was really important to me. I was helping others again. And so I had this surgery. I had to, as soon as they found it, I had to stop working out right away. If it had ruptured, it could have been life-threatening. So I had this major surgery, and the recovery, I have like a huge scar. I mean, the recovery is I think when everything kind of came to a head, because I'd lost all that weight. I felt like I was in a pretty good place. I was helping other people break out of their own prison, because being heavy is a physical and mental prison. It really is. You're just trapped in your own body. And it was really nice to play a part in helping others with that. So I felt like I was giving back and helping in that way. And then I couldn't do that. And then the recovery was very long. I couldn't sit up in bed by myself for a while. I mean, it was just, I just felt completely defeated. Like, why am I even it's like, am I going to start at square one again? Do I really want to? You just kind of talk yourself out of life, I guess.
What is that connection between PTSD and hopelessness?
I think just that kind of a has-been mentality in a way, where you were you almost felt like a god or something. Like you could do anything, like nothing could stop you. And you felt like you were really doing something important. You were making a real difference. And then once you don't have that, and it takes so much to achieve those things in your head. And once you don't really have that anymore, it happens kind of quickly, where you just, I can't do this now. And so I'll become less active. And then, my body hurts more because I don't have my muscle base. And then I'm depressed because I'm in pain. And then you just go down.
It's a vicious cycle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, really, it really is. So it's this downward spiral happens very quickly. Right. Before you know it, you're talking yourself out of having even people that you don't really want to bother anybody with any of this stuff, because you do think you can handle it yourself at first. And then when you think there's a problem, it's like, no, I'm supposed to be strong for others. I'm supposed to be the rock and pull others over their walls. And I'm good at it. Like we're good at being strong for other people. And so when it comes down to helping ourselves or spending the time on ourselves, I think it gets trickier there. Yeah. We're not as good at that, I think. At least I wasn't.
And to not have that bond, that connection, that camaraderie when you return. I mean, there's nothing, you can go to the gym and help other people lose weight, but it's not the same. And then you pick a career that essentially has you kind of doing your own thing by yourself, right? Like you go and you shoot pictures of other people, but ultimately it's like a solo business person situation. So you're not a member of a team. You're not, it's almost like, and the sense I have is that you're lacking that connection, but rather than seeking it out in a healthy way, you're doing the opposite. Like you're isolating further and further and further, which is only exacerbating the condition.
Yes. And then instead of helping or making a difference anymore, you're letting people down by coming up with reasons to not get together with them, or not answering really messages as often, things like that. So then there's guilt compiles. I think that was the biggest factor for me is this underlying guilt, and then this building guilt.
Were there people in your life who were saying, hey, Sarah, I think there's something going on here that you need to deal with? Or no?
No one knew.
Everyone was like,
thought
you were fine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. I had that on lock.
Even when you gained 100 pounds?
Now that I dressed really well to hide it, but I thought I was just this master of disguise. And a few people said something but it was usually things that would make me just go eat more, like, or they've asked, have you gained weight? I'm like, you already know the answer to that question, so I'm going to go get Taco Bell But
your parents weren't worried about you, or?
I think maybe it just, people didn't want to hurt my feelings or something too, but they may have made a comment or two. And I, of course, talked my way out of anything being wrong, or I just didn't want them to worry. But it really
was there a conscious awareness that you were trying to mask something, or did you really believe that you were fine?
No, I actually was, maybe in the back of my mind, I thought to myself, if I eat enough, then maybe it'll kill me or something. Maybe, and it almost, my cholesterol was in the high 280s or something like that. It got pretty out of control with my health. And
you're in like your 20s, right?
Yep, I was 27, 28, 29. And that's pretty young. So, but I'm really glad that I caught it. I think it came down to meeting the right people too. If I hadn't met my friend / trainer, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be here. Right. I might have had a stroke or heart attack like they projected within 5 years.
But your doctor was telling you to get it under control.
Well, I wasn't going to a doctor.
Oh, you weren't?
I hadn't been to a doctor in probably 7 or 8 years or something like that.
So what was the impulse to seek out the trainer? Like, how did that begin? How did you go from...
We met on a whim in a parking lot, and someone had been bothering her, and I was staying with her while she waited for the police to come, and that's how we met. And so we got to talking. She said she was a combat vet, and I was like, no way, me too. And I was like, she said she owned a gym. She knew that I was not happy as a veteran who was that size. And she reached out. She's like, I have a gym here and I help people all the time. I used to be in the 300s myself, which was huge because she really understood that prison I mentioned. And and she was a veteran. And it just came out. It came down to meeting the right person and letting them help me save myself.
That bond,
which is also
connection.
a big factor in the bicycle trip too, is the letting people encourage you and support you and being open about stuff.
Yeah, first, being willing to raise your hand and say, I need help, not just asking for help, but also being willing to receive it when it's being offered, right? Which is very difficult.
Yes, usually it's a dismissive kind of a downplay. I got it. I'm fine. How are you? Like, how can I help you?
Deflecting.
Yes, very much so. Which that is all I really want to do is better other people. Like, that's when I feel the best, is when I'm bettering others. Yeah, I would say. Which that was a huge thing that was missing in my life. I think making huge differences for people.
Do you think that had you not been diagnosed with the cyst and you had just continued to train and help people in the gym, that you would have been okay? Or do you think that you were still not really getting at the core issue? Like, it would have manifested one way or the other, but the cyst kind of, that situation and being where you were really forced to stop and be with yourself and be unable to distract yourself with external things like going to the gym, really forced you to confront it in a way that maybe would have taken a lot longer had that not occurred.
I think so. It was a blessing and a curse that happened.
Almost like a gift, right?
In a lot of ways, yeah. Sitting here now and looking back, yeah, it definitely was. I think I was confusing maybe happinesses with distractions. I would go to the gym and forget everything, and it was wonderful. And then I wouldn't sleep at night or something like that. So I think this kind of forced me to want to try to live again. Because I did have, the cancer scare and it's such a scary word anyway. There wasn't any present, by the way. I forgot to mention. That was a huge relief.
Yeah, your surgery went fine.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It was better than the best case scenario. They didn't have to remove anything but the cyst. So I guess things got kind of bad when I realized that I might not have the option of having kids. I've always been on the fence anyway, but it's nice to have the option. And I don't know, it all just came together. And I guess this kind of having this surgery and going through that took me to a bit of a breaking point there, because it got kind of dark right up until the surgery.
So what was the lowest moment? The darkest day?
I think it was probably the day right before I bought my bicycle, right before I bought the bicycle. And I knew after the surgery I'd be limited. My neck had gotten bad, my knees, I felt like I'd have to start all over. I had no muscle base anymore because that's when I'm not really in pain, is when I have the muscle in place. And I guess the photography was great, but I just didn't think I'd ever achieve that sense of fulfillment again. And now I can't even go to the gym and have that outlet anymore. I just felt like I'm just not capable of anything anymore.
Yeah. Was it depression? Was there suicidal ideation? Was there, what was the mindset?
Yes, I definitely was. I guess I can say that I was fantasizing about it. And that evening was probably the closest I'd ever come in my head to an attempt. I hadn't attempted suicide prior. And I just decided that I can't do that to I've lucked out with very loving family, and I couldn't do that to my parents. So...
But even in that moment, you didn't have friends or family around that had a sense that you were going sideways.
No one really knew I was going through any of this until I made a Facebook post about it and just was a little more vocal about some of the stuff I was going through.
What did you say in that?
Basically, I said a lot of the things I've said here. I expressed and explained that since getting out of the military, it feels like I've kind of lived a whole lifetime and there's really nothing left to do. That's kind of where I'd arrived in my mind. I said that I've had these nagging, gnawing thoughts that I'm really only living life to fulfill some sort of obligation to the people that love me and nothing more. And I felt so guilty about saying that because everybody that cares for me is probably like, I thought she has a great time with me. I could have done or said something differently. And usually people end up thinking that after it's too late. That's why I decided I need to get this post out there. And the reason I waited is because the bike trip was already in motion. I was like, here's what I'm doing about it. Because I didn't want to just come out and say all the negatives.
Okay, gotcha. So you went public with it after you were already kind of well into the solution.
Yes, I wanted to have a game plan so people knew. I didn't want people to worry. I never want anyone to worry about me. That's the thing. And so that's why I've kind of mastered this. There's a lot that happens behind a smile, really, in anybody, and I've gotten pretty good at I make people laugh. Like, that's my thing. I love making people people are having a good time and that they're safe around me. But I made that post and then I described the plan for the journey, and the support was unbelievable. It wasn't like I expected it would be, like private messages, you're in my thoughts, and if there's anything I can do, stuff like that. People were like, this is amazing. I'm sharing this, and maybe other veterans will kind of decide to do something about it, or just try to take back some of that purpose for themselves, try to take on a challenge.
Well, so when you're in that moment, you were in that darkest moment, what was it that clicked inside of you to do something about it? Like, take me from that moment to the moment of deciding that you're going to, get a bike and ride a bike, and how this whole ride came together. Yes,
I'd been planning the trip with a friend I met through a mutual friend, a Marine, and we talked about, but I hadn't purchased my bicycle yet. And I was still really struggling and on the fence about, actually going through with it. And I had an evening where I just tend to stare at the wall sometimes for a while and think about big stuff or just anything really. And I get kind of lost in some of that. And I think I just convinced myself that I think people would be okay. And that basically it goes back to coming home without my friend. Just I don't know if I deserve to be here. And I'm not even taking advantage of the life that has been gifted to me because of someone else's sacrifice. And it just really gnaws at me. It still does, but it's better having, completed this. But I had kind of a game plan for if I'd gone through with taking my life and everything. And it was a bit elaborate, but it was kind of like maybe the least shocking kind of ways. I just didn't want to hurt anyone or scar anybody.
Yeah.
So, that night I was right there. I'll say I was like right there, and I ended up just falling asleep. And so the next day I was like, that's it. I can't do one more night like that. I'm not gonna get through it. I'm not gonna get through it. So I literally just woke up and went and purchased my bicycle the next day.
Went right to the bike store.
Yes.
And you so the plan was, the plan was already in motion to do a ride prior to that. You just hadn't taken any action on it yet.
Right. Purchasing the bicycle was like the decision, like that decision maker.
And had you been a cyclist? Like, had you ridden a bike before?
No, not since ninth grade.
Like, other than just being a kid around the neighborhood. Grade school was the last time I'd ridden a bicycle. So, but it comes right back. It really does. I took the bicycle from... The adage is true. Once you learn how to ride a bike.
Like riding a bike, and everyone would say it, and I'd be like, and then I got on it, and I'm like, okay, that's why that exists. It really does come right back. And so I got a Kona Sutra, a steel frame Kona Sutra from a bike shop in Nashville called Halcyon. And I went in a few times, didn't take it on a test ride. I was nervous, but I didn't want them to know. I was like, no, I don't really have time right now. I was just kind of looking around, and I was like, I'm going to fall. Like, I didn't want to embarrass myself.
It's intimidating to go into a bike shop when you don't really know what's going on. I remember the first time I did that. Yeah, it's weird because you think everyone's an expert and they're going to, like, if you're afraid to ask a stupid question or whatever.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, I mess up all the time and make fun of myself all the time, but I don't want to like sound stupid. I mean, no one wants to sound stupid.
But was the idea you were going to ride across the United States already? So, okay. So there was this grand vision.
Yes. Yep. I just needed to
get the bike.
Buy that bike. Right. Yeah. So I went in and talked with one of the owners, and she's like, do you want me to go on a test ride with you? And, because I think she could tell I was really hesitant about trying it. And so we got on the bicycles and started going down the street, and it felt unbelievable. It was like unbelievable. The wind and the work and all those feelings. I was like, this is great. I can do this. Not only is this fun or whatever, but I feel like I can really physically do this. That was a huge fear of mine. Was, do I start out on this and then my physical limitations? I don't want to fail at anything, and I don't want to commit to something. You did
boot camp. You could do it. Well,
I know,
except
but
what you mean with the injuries and the pain and stuff.
Yes, with because I've had chronic worsening pain over the years, so it's worsening. I've been to the VA for MRIs and things like that, so they're working with me on trying to help it, but it's been diagnosed as chronic pain that has worsened over the years, unfortunately. So like hiking or really long distance hiking and everything, I just can't.
Yeah.
Or carrying a backpack for a long time.
Have they prescribed like pain meds for that?
They offered. I made it a point to not do the narcotics, but
they offer you like Oxy? What did they offer you?
I believe it was oxycodone, but I asked specifically not for a narcotic, and they gave me like 200, 300 ibuprofen, 800 milligram ibuprofen, which
like the hardcore ibuprofen.
Yes, like the highest one you can get. And I only take it when I absolutely have to, because I like to know what's going on with my body too. So I try not to do really pain meds, because I will overdo it. As soon as I don't feel pain, it's like I feel like Superwoman. Like I just want to bust through every wall I can find. But
and what did they ever were you ever prescribed like SSRIs, like an antidepressant medication?
Cymbalta. Cymbalta. And I actually didn't start taking it. I left on the bike trip instead.
Yeah.
And that was a really good choice, I think. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It is supposed to help with nerve pain and chronic pain too. So it made sense that they prescribed it. Once I was out there, I felt wonderful.
Freedom.
Yes. Yeah. Everything about the journey was incredible.
So you go out on this test ride and then you come back and you're like, all right, I'm buying this. Like, how did that work?
That's exactly what happened. We went out, we just did some road cycling, and I got ahead of her real quick because I was starting to tear up. I was so happy that I could do it. Not only just with the balance aspect, but my knees didn't hurt. I mean, it was only, a half a mile, but my knees didn't hurt at all. And the way I had it positioned where the seat was slightly lower, my neck really didn't hurt because I wasn't real hunched, like I'm supposed to be. But I had to make some modifications to my bicycle for my neck. And I was just excited. It's like, I really believe I can do this. Yeah. And then I bought that thing. I was like, this is happening.
And how long after you bought it did the ride begin?
Less than a month. Yes, I really only trained for about 3 weeks.
Right.
And by train, I mean like unweighted 10-mile rides. I was like, yeah, this is cool. I did a 50-miler on, it's called the Natchez Trace Parkway near south of Nashville. But Nashville has this the Music City Bikeway. It's like 30 miles long. It goes through a lot of the parks. It's beautiful. So I went out there, and that's how I trained. I just rode my bike and got used to it.
And did you get like the panniers and all that? The idea is you're going to bring all your stuff, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. It was a self-supported run, and this is how little experience I had. I have always and still call them panniers.
Okay.
All the time. They're panniers. Yeah, that's what I said, panniers. I have a hilariously small amount of experience, which that's a huge factor, is that anyone can do what I did. Honest to God, anyone can do what I did, especially after coming out of a major surgery, having the physical pain, no experience whatsoever. It's just
basically no training.
No training or experience.
3 weeks beforehand, you hadn't ridden a bike since you were 10 years old.
Yes. Yeah. Well, ninth grade. I don't know. Whatever that is. Yeah. A long time ago, a lifetime ago, several lifetimes ago.
And did you get like a tent and everything? Like you're basically you're going to camp along the way, and did you spend a lot of time figuring out the route and where you wanted to go? And
the route was already preset. It's a route by the Adventure Cycling Association. It's called the Transamerica Trail. And it originally goes from Yorktown, Virginia to Astoria, Oregon. But in Pueblo, Colorado, it branches off. You can take what's called the Western Express, which is what I did.
That takes you to San Francisco.
Yes. Yeah. I really wanted to cross the Golden Gate for the finish. I just thought it'd be really symbolic. I'd never been there. Just crossing bridges and new beginnings and that whole mindset.
And when you embarked upon this, did you have a sense that this was going to be a mission, not just for yourself, but to, connect with veterans along the way and try to be, available and of assistance? Or did that develop over time? Because you kind of had two bites at this apple, right? Which we'll get into. Yes.
A huge part of it was honoring the friends I lost overseas, and definitely post-war healing for me. I needed to do something. It was kind of a bit of a Hail Mary trip. I was kind of at my rock bottom. I believe it was my rock bottom. I think I was starting to feel some of the things that some of my friends had been feeling, and I'd lost a couple of friends to suicide also. So, and it was definitely, I wanted to not only help myself, but help others in different ways. I wanted to be a little more vocal about some of the stuff I was dealing with, and I didn't think there was any way I could be alone in it, And then just the fact that I'd lost friends to suicide, I wanted to talk more about that too, because I understood that downward spiral and the darkness and how it just swoops in and sweeps you off your feet.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is that typically people that embark upon these kind of adventures, they had their lowest moment or their darkest moment, and then there's the healing period, and then they become whole. And then they decide, okay, now I'm going to share it, whether that means riding their bike across the country or starting a nonprofit or whatever. There's kind of there's a period of time that elapses in between those two things. And for you, they're like right on top of each other. Right?
Yes.
Like, so you're very close to that dark moment, but you're already like, you're not like just in the solution. You're already in the advocacy role as well at the same time.
Yes. The darkness and the light kind of, it was going to be one or the other when I bought that bicycle, and I chose to do the bicycle thing. And so I posted on Facebook about it, and then I documented it as I went, made it public. I liked the added pressure of people following, and it fueled me, the support and encouragement and everything. I mean, yeah, some people, sure, there's like doubters and stuff, or like, but that's totally fine. That's happened to me my whole life. I encourage it. Yeah. Like, it's fine. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy.
And you're posting on Facebook, and you're very public about this. So tell me about some of the experiences that you had connecting with veterans along the way.
There were many veterans I ran into, and it was amazing. And almost none of them were planned. So it wasn't like, I'm going to go to this VFW and they know I'm coming, and I'm going to talk to them, and they're waiting for me. I wanted to go to more VFWs. There weren't a lot on the route. Mm-hmm. So I was able to go to some, and they were awesome. They didn't really know I was coming. I didn't really broadcast it in that way. I kind of wanted it to be a little more private, but also let people in on it, kind of a thing, rather than the big spotlight thing. Because I'm actually really not used to that sort of thing, because I am a private person. And so I guess I sought out veterans in the towns I would go through.
How did you find them?
It just happened. Literally, I have countless experiences with veterans. I have to write about them all. I included a bunch in my blog, but there's so many more than that. They were, for us being such a small percent of the population, it felt like we were just everywhere. It's almost like they found me or something. Like I needed to find them, and vice versa or something. It really was that random, and which I think made it way more beautiful and special. And having it unplanned, I think, resulted in maybe a deeper connection with it being so spontaneous.
Right. And tell me about what transpires when you make that connection. Like, how is that, how and why is that healing, not just for you, but for the other person?
I think once you discover that each other is a veteran, you kind of start in this different place, I think, where you get to skip past a bunch of stuff. And like the small talk thing, or sometimes it takes people years to get kind of close like that. And you can just almost dive into each other. You don't have to skim the surface. You just dive into the conversation. You could just start making fun of each other. You could pick on, each other has the same sense of humor, similar mindsets. I think a lot of us share the same qualities when we join, like wanting to, the selfless service and all that sort of aspect in there. So you already kind of know who the person is deep down a little bit, and then you can build from there. Mm-hmm. And the sense of humor really is the best part. I mean, sitting there for a half hour and joking on each other is therapy. Like, I love that stuff.
So it wasn't necessarily about making a point of bringing up PTSD as it was just organically connecting with these people.
The topic almost always got brought up. And if it didn't, I tried to talk about some of the stuff I was going through and why I was doing what I was doing. I always made it a point to, because really, more than anything, I was asked, like, what are you doing? Why? And then, of course, and if it didn't, I would go into it eventually after letting them speak.
And so what
did
you say? I mean, what is the response to that? Like, I'm dealing with PTSD, and I was at a very dark moment, and now I'm doing this to try to reclaim my life?
Right. That's basically what I would say. I explained that it had kind of come to a head, some of the guilt and depression and some of the things. I needed to do something to kind of prove to myself that I wanted and deserved to be here. I needed a big challenge to prove I was still capable of something like this. And it was very important to me to to honor the friends I lost by living instead of isolating and not wanting to be here. And then having lost friends to suicide, knowing that there's 22 a day that are doing this and that I was so close myself, it was kind of a personal, intimate testimony to that too.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't know that we were losing 22 veterans a day. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's so many. I mean, you fight so hard to get back. And I would describe it as the war inside is just totally different than the ones we were trained to win.
Yeah, very, very well trained to fight the war without, not so well trained to combat the war within. And the war within doesn't go away until it's confronted, does it? No,
and you can beat it to death here in your own head. You can fuel it within seconds, over weeks, without knowing.
Well, all those skills that you learn in the military work at cross purposes with what's required of you to actually get to the other side, right? So that has to be confusing.
It can be. There's definitely an internal conflict, the light and the darkness, and what to say, what not to say, who you want to let in and in what ways. And I don't know, but on the trip, one of the biggest factors for my personal healing was talking to other veterans. And I think that really is like one of the biggest things we can do for ourselves is to seek out other veterans, spend time, whatever that entails. Like I said, you could just make fun of each other and that's therapy sometimes, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm somebody who's I've been in recovery for a long time, and a core aspect of that is getting together with other, alcoholics and addicts, and you have that shorthand, and there's that community, and there's that connectivity and that accountability that helps people not just get sober, but stay sober. And that's like the most important community to me and my long-term well-being. Without that, I don't know if I would be here. So why would it be any different for what you're going through and what's required for you to heal and to help others heal?
Yes, there's a lot of people bond, I think, through struggle and tragedy more powerfully than anything, I think.
And you have a collective experience that a lot of people can't relate to, that only you truly understand. Yeah.
And even more so, it does come down to individual veterans too, and their struggles and issues vary person to person, which is why it's hard to decipher a one solution to all this, So
yeah, it all gets thrown under the umbrella of PTSD, but you could be somebody who suffered a sexual abuse situation or childhood abuse, or you could have been on a deployment where your best friend gets blown up by an IED or something like that. Like those all fall under that umbrella, but those are all very different things. They're all traumas, but I would imagine, the specifics are important in terms of how you move forward. Right.
Yeah. The experiences are all they all vary, and it's almost like different wounds, similar scars. And I don't know, when you get around people that you've been through something similar with, so much can go unspoken. Like you don't have to dive into the darkest things to relate. And especially if you don't focus on comparing, if you focus on relating and listening.
What were some of the more profound or impactful encounters that you had with veterans along the way? Like others, or a particular one that stands out?
Yes, there's several actually. And I would say specifically Vietnam veterans, the insight I gained from them was mind-blowing. They've been dealing with things a lot longer, and they didn't stop fighting when they came home. Like when they got back, I mean, I can't imagine that. Well, I got a welcome home ceremony, I can't imagine going through something like that and then coming back to that. And they worked so hard to pave the way for my generation of combat veterans. And so basically the consensus is it doesn't get any easier. You just need to figure out ways to deal with it and not tough it out, but just know that it probably or might not get easier, and have that in mind and just kind of work with it. Don't stop trying to help yourself. And they're all close. They're pretty, I think, tight knit, or they try to stay in contact. I did meet a few along the way that they don't go to anything militarily. They do stay at home quite a bit. And honestly, from what they told me, that is a big problem for them too. I think it just comes down to seeking out each other, putting the effort into just talking to each other about it.
Did you meet anybody that you were deployed with, or anybody that was in Tikrit when you were there?
On my journey?
Yeah.
No. Everyone I deployed with was in Ohio, so my route was Virginia, Kentucky, Illinois, Kansas, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and California. It was so far south.
What was the hardest part of the ride?
Well, I don't mean to. Every country or every part of the country presented totally different challenges. Like the Appalachians, starting east to west, just starting right into the Appalachians was
right. So you're going into the wind the whole time. So
yes,
you made it hard
headwind
for yourself from the get-go by deciding to go east to west.
Yes, the headwind was, especially in the Rocky Mountains, the headwind was relentless. And then you would crest. Well, then the mountains were difficult alone, but then you would start to crest, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, it's the summit!" And then huge headwind, and you almost like go backward. But yeah, the headwinds were a challenge for sure. But honestly, I think the biggest threat along the way, it wasn't people like everyone thought it would be. It was the heat. I feel like the heat was this little sneaky ninja that in the Ozarks, it was the humidity was nuts.
Humidity, yeah. Just yesterday, I had two women in here who are endurance athletes, and one of whom did Race Across America, like her and a teammate. They did it, 8 days? I think they did, in 8 days. They rode across America. And she was saying that the hardest part was the Ozarks, right? The Appalachians or the Ozarks? I think of the Ozarks. She was like, the Rockies were hard, but like the Ozarks were like super hard. I mean, they go west to east. So they're coming up the other side from where you rode, and I'm sure it wasn't the same route, but she was saying, they were steeper and windy and like brutal. Yeah,
they just come out of nowhere. And like, I must have been just super geographically challenged. I thought after the Appalachians, it was just going to flatten out for me, and I was super excited, and that's the Ozarks started. So when I hit Kansas, that everyone told me, well, by everyone I mean quite a few people told me that I would hate Kansas. It's boring. You can see as far as, you can't. I loved Kansas after the Appalachians and the Ozarks. It was like a dream. It was amazing.
No hills 60, for 70, the next 80 however many days. Yeah.
Yes. And the straight line, it's great. You could just kind of let your mind race instead of you like going crazy. It's just a steady.
Did you listen to music or audiobooks or?
Yes.
You did, yeah.
I listened to music every day. On the trickier roads, I'd leave like my left earbud out, so I can hear the cars and everything. But music was huge on this thing. My playlist was super random, but different songs were perfect with different cadences and intensities. And then, of course, just the mood, where my thoughts were at that day, the music I would just pick to cater to that. So
man, I can't listen to music for long periods of time. Like I need something else to focus my brain on. So I would listen to podcasts or audiobooks or something like that.
I should. Oh, another thing is the sounds of nature were amazing. I mean, if I knew I'd be in a heavily wooded area or something like that, I would just turn it off and just listen. You can just hear your tires on the pavement, and then all the sounds around you. It was just wonderful.
And how did you deal with food? I mean, were you ever in a situation where the next place to get something to eat was too far away, or did you make sure you had enough packed with you all the time? Yes,
I always carried 3 days of food on me. And I mainly took oatmeal. Oatmeal was huge for energy and everything. It's almost like my body knew exactly what to do with it. And I could just go and go and go with oatmeal. So I had like my cook set and my food. Bananas were helpful, but they're heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would carry 3 days of food on me just in case.
And did you ever when you would come into a city, would you be like, I'm getting a hotel room, I'm going to take a shower?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes. I think my favorite part at night was the camping, though. Like, that was my very favorite, was to end the day and just sleep under the stars and listen to everything I just cycled through, and the air and everything. I don't know. I love roughing it so much. That was a huge plus for the trip for me.
So you get into Colorado, and then you have a unfortunate encounter with a truck.
Yes.
What happened?
It was the first day into the Rocky Mountains. So I was coming up on my first incline in the Rockies after going through Kansas, and I was on a curve, and this big black truck came over. He was just starting to come over more and more. So I went over, but there really wasn't a shoulder. It was just sand. And so I went
towards you?
No, behind me.
Behind
me. I watched my rear view like a hawk too. So he just kept veering right. So I did too, and I went off the road, went into the sand, and then fell back into the lane, and just missed his he was pulling a trailer. So I just missed his trailer and then landed in the lane. There was a car tailgating the truck that didn't see me because they were so close. So I threw my arm up real quick, and they swerved around my head, basically. Whoa. It was so loud, the sound of the tire. When I'm at a red light and someone's goofing off and they peel out, I still like, that sound is so distinct, and it was so piercing. And so the night before, I ran into have you heard of Team Rubicon?
Yeah.
They're much bigger now. They're awesome. A lot of veterans, mostly veterans, are in there. And they were working on a project locally. There'd been some fires and then mudslides and then flooding. So they were clearing out some of the rivers and creeks and everything. And they were working down the hill that day, and they heard the tires squeal.
Wow.
They're like, we wondered why there wasn't a crash afterward. And I was like, oh, that was me not getting run over. No big deal. But I partially tore my PCL ligament in my knee. And I stayed in Colorado Springs for like 2 weeks trying to recover, because I didn't want to go. I wanted to continue.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't getting better. I waited. I went to the VA a couple times. Of course, they're like, change your socks, take Motrin, drink water. You're cool in like
Super
3 days.
helpful.
3 days tops. You'll be back in the game. So I did everything right. I elevated, iced it, all that stuff. So I got on my bicycle after 2 weeks, flat ground, no weight, and it swelled right up. And I knew it wasn't good. So I ended up going back to Nashville. I had to let it heal then over the winter. And then I had to wait for winter to end because the Rocky Mountains, I was starting literally back into my first mountain the day I started back. So the winters last a lot longer at the top of the summits. So I had to wait till, I started back on June 2nd from Pueblo. So I went back slightly on the route, like a day or two back. And Pueblo was very special to me. They actually had a send-off. They felt bad it happened in their state. And I was like, one bad apple doesn't... Yeah, it was... it was mind-blowing, really. The whole trip really was. The kindness, it was nuts. And they had a send-off there. And there's a bike shop there, Great Divide, and they tuned my bike up for free for me and everything. And there was a group of cyclists that rode with me that first day back out.
That's cool.
It was really odd. The support was incredible. It really fueled me to, it's like, I'm definitely finishing this. That first day back, there was an incline, and I knew that would kind of set the tone. And I busted up that thing. I could, I got up that. It was so liberating to come off. There's nothing worse than being athletic or in the middle of something like that and having an injury and going through that recovery. That's what kind of brought things to a head to begin with. I was like, cool, another vicious cycle. I made it halfway, just over halfway. But I'm like, no, not this time. I'm like, you have to finish what you start.
When you had to go back home and nurse that injury, how did you prevent yourself from succumbing to another vicious cycle and falling into a depression and emotional eating? And, how did you put the brakes on basically falling prey to what had handicapped you previously?
I think the difference this time was that I'd let people in and I had this support system in place. And there were all these people that were encouraging me that I was making a difference for them also, that I was inspiring them and answering their messages. I would message with probably a dozen, maybe 24 vets a day. Like, hey, this is inspiring me to be more active, or I'm going to start this thing. I'm going to hike this and do that. Cool. And like, I read your story and like, well, you're amazing. I'm like, no, you can do, trust me, you can do it. And so I was having all these conversations and interactions with other veterans through my Facebook message or Facebook page. And all these people, I couldn't possibly consider not continuing this time. And so I actually had an Army buddy of mine come down for a couple weeks and help me train and get kind of back on after I nursed it for a while. He helped me get back on track, and that was super helpful. I just made sure I did everything right. I documented my recovery and everything. I think that pressure really, really helps me. I like to kind of be under pressure.
Yeah, the pressure and being a member of a community that was quickly growing and of which you were, basically the hub with all these spokes going out everywhere.
That made me feel awesome. I mean, I love knowing I'm making some kind of difference. So finishing what I started was a no-brainer to me. I was going to do whatever it took to do it. I was like, I'm going to have to, it would take me probably losing a leg to not, even then, whatever it took, I couldn't let these people down or myself. I was like, no, I'm regaining this lust for life. I can feel it happening. I can feel the healing happening. And so that was really that was the difference this time, really, is that I let people in, and then it became this totally different cycle. It was it was beautiful. It was awesome.
And the idea was, I want to connect with America, this country that, basically I went overseas to serve. I want to get to know the people that live here. What else did you learn about our country? With you're connecting with all these veterans, but what did you not expect to discover, or what surprised you?
The kindness and warmth surprised me, in that another thing that was kind of bumming me out quite a lot, actually, is just how divided everything feels anymore. No one's looking for reasons to like each other, and it just feels like everyone just kind of hated each other. And especially over the last couple of years with the media, social media, stuff like that, is all this negativity all the time. And you already kind of feel alienated enough. And then to kind of come back to a society where no one's really getting along,
Yeah.
It is a bummer. And that definitely contributed to, me wanting to reconnect with the country and experience people again. The surprise was that the warmth was overwhelming from east to west.
Yeah, I feel like we are very divided right now, and we're sitting here the day after midterm elections. If you're on Twitter or Facebook or on social media in general, if you're watching the news, it can be depressing and dire to come into the sense of just how differently so many people see the world, and how we're unable to have healthy communication about these things. But when, I go out into communities, it doesn't reflect what you're seeing on Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, right. When you're with people in person, it's one-on-one, then I realize maybe we're not really as divided as it appears, or that picture that's being painted perhaps isn't as accurate as reality.
Yeah, when you're sitting in front of the person, there's almost like a little more respect is required, and I think people tend to maybe share other people's words and thoughts on social media. They're not having to formulate their own and really think through why they're heated or emotionally charged about things. They're like, yeah, that sort of lines up. I'm going to post this, and then they lose friends or people get offended. And, it is a problem. Reconnecting with people in person is completely different when you're sitting there with someone. Like, you want to give them their chance to talk, and vice versa. It's just a lot harder to be rude and dismissive in person too. I think people want to deep down, they want to get along and be happy with themselves, and I would think So it just felt, like I said, very divided and negative. So I wanted to get away from that too. So I didn't really spend hardly any time on social media. I would do a blog post maybe once every 3 weeks or something. I could have done way more. I would get messages like, "Are you alive? Like,
right.
can you say something? You know, I want to know how this went." I'm like, "I'm sorry. It takes me a while to get my stuff together." Plus I tried not to be on there too much, but still enough where people know what I'm doing and things. Mm-hmm. But it was a really nice experience detaching from all of that. And I miss it. I do kind of miss just kind of being out there. I mean, I miss it very much. And I was going to tell you, well, we hadn't talked about the remainder of the trip yet, but coming home is a lot like coming back from a deployment too.
Yeah, I was curious about that because now you've done another huge adventure, right? Mm-hmm. And you have a re-acclimation period, different from returning from deployment, but also the prospect of having some kind of big letdown and becoming depressed would be, if not expected, normal, right? Mm-hmm. So I imagine there was some fear, like, am I going to have that experience again?
That's exactly what happened. Well, people asked me what I was most afraid of about it, and it was finishing. My honest answer was always finishing. Then what? You know, square one. Just another vicious cycle. That was my biggest fear. Uh-huh. And so I decided during my recovery, I really put together an idea for a veteran program and nonprofit that I'm starting in Nashville, taking veterans out in nature, detaching together.
Waypoint Vets, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
you could return with this mission of basically paying forward the experience that you had.
That's exactly what I want and need to do. Is I would always ask people on the trip, what can I ever do to thank you or repay you? And I said, just continue it, the kindness. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. That's exactly what I've been missing.
There was that New York Times article that shared your story and the story of a number of other veterans who have had similar experiences to your own, and they mentioned this organization called warriorexpeditions.org, right? So it was some guy who basically had the same epiphany that you had, and it's like, look, we need to get these guys home and get them out in nature, and their stories about veterans coming home and walking the Appalachian Trail, or just really having that quietude, that silence, that ability to phase themselves back into a sense of normalcy slowly and over time, that I think we lack. And as I recall, there was a story in there about how that used to be, I can't remember where it was, maybe you remember, that used to be something that was kind of structured, like these soldiers would literally walk from wherever their battlefield was back to wherever they lived, and it could take weeks or something like that, and that space allowed them to decompress sufficiently to ward off some of these, PTSD symptoms. But when you just get on a plane, one day you're in Tikrit and the next day you're in Ohio, that's got to be super weird.
It's like, what just happened? Yeah. It's so quick. So yeah, taking the time and consciously tackling some of the things, getting away from the stimuli daily, all these little daily decisions and these little mundane things we worry about every day, just eliminating those from the equation, you can really do not only soul searching, but you can kind of hash through a lot, like what do I really need to be thinking about all the time, because it simplifies your life. And so you can also tackle big things to simplify your thought processes, your daily thought processes. Like on the road, it was so simple. You know what you have to do. You have to cycle this day, and then you plan where you end, and then you have a plan for food and water, and you have everything you need on your bike, and you don't need anything from anybody. So you get to enjoy the experience of the day and the experience of meeting the people. And then
you're happy. And yet we create these lives that are so complicated. We create all these complications because we delude ourselves into thinking that's what's going to make us happy. But it's actually only when we strip away all of that and get back to kind of the bare necessities.
Like I got home and I didn't even...
Yeah.
I still don't know exactly how to dress myself yet. I'm still wearing like the same 4 things, even today.
You're wearing your cycling kit right now.
Yes. Well, it's been
I know. Honor the fallen.
I had to, but yes, I have worn this otherwise. So it's just, you just kind of, you don't want to add all that back. If anything, you want to go back out there to where it's normal. And another reason this was so helpful is that it like justified that hypervigilance, having to watch everything, and it's so quick paced, and any little thing like a chipmunk could end you out there on a decline. It's funny, but also it's true. Like a pine cone, literally, you could lose control and, coming down a mountain, a gust of wind, things like that. Like you have to constantly be on point, watching everything.
Like you have to be in the military.
Yes. Yeah. It was really nice to conjure all that back up, and those skill sets, just knowing that they were still in place and that it was an environment where I could use them and not feel weird or silly.
Well, I think in the wake of this adventure, on this issue of, how are you going to, this fear of completing it, and is this going to set in motion another, vicious cycle that you're going to have to overcome, the post, elation experience of coming down back to earth and reintegrating yourself back into your life. The distinguishing thing, the difference is that this was part of a healing process, right? Like you're healing as you go by connecting with these veterans, by connecting with your body, by connecting with nature. So when you think back on this bike ride, is it the adventure aspect of it? Is it the challenge aspect of doing something that was very difficult and maybe you thought you couldn't do? Was it the connecting with the veterans and just Americans in general? What aspect of that do you think has been the most impactful on your healing process? Or is it just all of those things together?
Well, the easy answer would be all of it. And the truest answer would be all of it. But I really feel that I wasn't okay. And I'm really no good to anyone unless I'm good to go. And the reconnecting, like you said, with your body, with nature, and with people, I think it just really takes all 3 of those things. That's why I want to do this next step. And I've felt like my life was changed forever in a really good way, from east to west. I like to relive some of the days randomly throughout my day. And I want to facilitate like smaller versions of what I experienced firsthand, this healing. I want to help other veterans get a sense of that, or at least introduce them to it.
I think that's a worthy venture. We just, we like to say, we support the troops. Thank you for your service. But we don't do very much in terms of supporting those troops once they come home. And part of that is the government's responsibility. And part of that is our responsibility as a community of civilians and how we interact with veterans and how we support them, and making sure that these services are readily available to the veterans in need, and that an environment is created in which they feel comfortable availing themselves of that, right? Because the statistics are shocking. 22 a day take their life. How many are thinking about it? How many have failed suicide attempts? How many are depressed? How many are over-medicated? I mean, the numbers have to be astonishing, right? The Veterans Administration can't solve all of these problems. And we as a culture need to do a better job of raising awareness about what's going on and finding solutions, supportive solutions to addressing and solving this very big issue. Yeah,
I think I've said in my blog, I feel like we have a responsibility to ourselves and each other and our fallen, to help each other, pick each other up and fight through this war inside that we're all facing, just maybe lighter or darker in different times for the individual. But it really, I think, comes down to us helping each other. I think the people best equipped to help us are us. And I think people want to help but don't really know how. And a lot of times we don't know what to tell them. We don't know.
Yeah, it's awkward as somebody who's a civilian and you encounter a veteran, you don't really know what to say. You know that you don't really understand their situation. You want to say the right thing and you don't know what that is. So you say, thank you for your service. And then there's like, okay, are we done? What do I say now? Right?
Yes, yeah.
It's awkward. It's weird, right? I'm sure you have this all the time.
Yes, I always say thank you for your support too. I mean, without that support and encouragement and that back and forth, it never gets old, you know, to hear thank you, even though we don't feel we're deserving of the thanks a lot of the times, or we kind of shy away from the compliments or the word hero or anything like that. You know, humility is, you know, we think about the people we lost when we hear that stuff. And sometimes it's just better to say thank you and thank you for your support, because, you know, like I said, we had a welcome home when we got back. If that wasn't in place, who knows how myself or my friends or any of my generation would. Yeah. Do
you think that the movies get it right? Like whether it's Hurt Locker or did you see Thank You for Your Service? Did you see that movie?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah. I'm just curious as to whether you think that Hollywood accurately reflects that experience, or whether it's a glossed over version, or if there is a show or a movie that got it right, what that would be.
I thought Hurt Locker was very well done. I really did. And I think that they definitely try to be as accurate as they can. They have to, I think, glam it up for the audience. But for me, the parts that get me in the movies is the coming back and that
Did
feeling.
Did you see Coming Home?
Mm-mm.
That's a classic. John Voight, Coming Home from Vietnam. You should see that movie.
Okay, I will. But
I interrupted you, sorry.
No,
yeah.
No. I'm making a mental note because I should see a movie about a Vietnam veteran coming home. I've spoken with so many Vietnam veterans. It'd probably give me some insight. Mm-hmm. It's the least I could do after all they've given me. So
speaking of which,
coming home is the heart. I think for me it was the weirdest part. Like, you'll never be the same again. The child is lost. That innocent. Or I don't know. There's so much that could be attributed to it. But you know, you probably never be the same again, or maybe relate a lot less with a lot fewer people. Things like that.
It was cool in researching your story and looking on your Facebook page and your blog and seeing a couple videos. My favorite is I assume they're Vietnam veterans, the vets who were on motorcycles who escorted you down to the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yes.
That was super cool.
That day was amazing. They were the Legion riders, the American Legion riders. And it was very last minute, short notice, and they came out there. I went to the War Memorial Museum downtown San Francisco and met a guy who's the chair there. And then he and a commander from one of the American Legion posts there made a couple calls and said, hey, we got this, combat veteran. She's cycling across America. She's finishing. You guys want to come out and, be there? And they did. They totally showed up. It was mind-blowing, the last minute support like that. Just people hearing about it and be like, we're there. We're just there. And I try to tell as many veterans as possible that we do have a family out there that's bigger than any one of us can ever imagine. I never imagined that I would have that outpouring of support like that, And after moving states and losing touch with people, not seeking out veteran organizations and not talking to other veterans for a while, I totally forgot about that, and I just remember we all met at the north end of the bridge and crossed into San Francisco. So I was in the bike lane on the Golden Gate, and then they were in the regular lanes because I couldn't be there and they couldn't be here. So, and they were just cranking their, it just sounded thunder. It was like this thunderous, wonderful thing. And so we crossed the the bridge. And while I was on there, I was just thinking to myself, like, this is it, this is the finish line. And I just started thinking about all the support I'd gotten, and it really took me over. I mean, I was halfway down the bridge where the arches or the cables kind of were at their lowest, and I caught a glimpse of the Pacific, and it was overwhelming. And so afterward, we went through a part of San Francisco, which is very hilly city.
Yes.
I was very fatigued. I was like, I can't mess this up the last day. That's ridiculous, Sarah. Get it together. But
and you made a promise that you were never going to walk your bike, right?
Yes, yeah. I never once walked my bike on the trip. That is something I just did for me. It wasn't to prove anything to anyone but myself. That's something I really wanted to do, and I stuck to it. And actually, I did walk across the sand of the Pacific, but
yeah,
you have to.
Were you at the Presidio or were you at Ocean Beach?
It was Ocean Beach,
right? Yeah,
which is a really long. Well, it's a long beach, but it's also a very wide beach. And so I got to the stairs, and they were all in the sand. I went down the stairs with my bike. I had all my stuff on there. It was heavy, and the bike was just sinking. And I was pushing my bicycle through the sand, and it was very honestly, it was very difficult. I was kind of coming up on some muscle
failure. You're like 100 yards from the beach, and you're like, I'm not going to make it.
It was like an 800-foot walk, in my defense. But my legs they were hit muscle failure after the inclines and everything. And I looked down at my feet, and I equated kind of my shoes in the sand and my boots in the sand overseas. And I remember that's when I felt like the most capable. That's when I felt the most alive. And something just kind of happened. I kind of got this second wind that could sink ships, I said in my thing. And everyone was just yelling, "You got this," and I heard all those voices, and it all came together in my head. And honestly, I was that close to muscle failure, like no one knows but me until now. But it took that, and something just clicked, and I just hauled. I mean, I don't know if I can swear, but
you can swear.
I hauled ass down. That's very mild too, but I just pushed, and I got to the shore. And when I walked in the water, and I felt the waves rush around my ankles, it was like I felt everything. I felt everyone, everyone we'd lost, everyone that supported me, everyone that was there and couldn't be there. I just felt them all. I just really felt deep down in my soul that I'd made them proud, that it was a mission accomplished. And
yeah. And a mission accomplished for yourself, but more importantly, a mission that represented healing for other people as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can take back control of your life and your happiness. I mean, we have to take control.
If you're not going to do it, no one's going to do it.
No one can. People want to do it for you, but they don't know how. You're the only one that knows exactly how to do it.
One of the things I like that you said was that in the military, you're trained to believe that the M16 becomes an extension of your arm, right? And that the bike then became the extension of your arm for you, like you'd swapped one for the other. But it has that equal, that equal importance to you. Yes.
The day I purchased it, I got a little choked. I've been talking a lot about crying, but I'm not a big crier. I want to go on the record to say, but I did get a little choked up when I bought that bike secretly. I put my hand on the saddle, and I was thinking about that connection, with my M16. And it's like that. I relied on that. It relied on me. You keep it clean. It keeps you alive. And you now I have my bicycle, and it's going to get me from one side of the country to the other. And who knows what's going to happen in between. And it's just me and my bike, and it was really a special connection. I don't know. I knew we'd go through so much together already. Like I was already thinking way ahead to all the possibilities and the elements and all that stuff. And then at the end there, having it with me that whole time, having been through everything we'd been through, all the inclines and the tornado in Kansas and
You just glossed over that.
Oh, sorry.
You go through a tornado?
There was a tornado warning that it hit very close. I hid in a storm. Well, I hid in a storm drain for part of it, and then ended up in an unused elementary school. I ran into this lady who had a key. And I'm like, do you know where I should probably go for this tornado warning? Because I was just going to sleep under that awning at the city park. And she's like, I happen to have a key to this elementary school. And she let me in there, and I hid under the foundation.
Oh, my God.
I found an old piano.
But there was no tornado after all?
No, it touched down nearby.
It did? Wow.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It was coming, fortunately.
Was there a moment where... during the ride when you realized like, oh, this is working? Like, was there a tipping point where you're like, oh, this is healing? Like, this is going to be profound for me? Or was it just in the completion of it?
No, it was throughout.
One?
It was totally throughout.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, the town that we started out in was Yorktown. There was this restaurant, the Beachcomber restaurant, and we just walked in and randomly met these people, and all the staff and the guests in there, they all came out and took a picture with me. And just from day one, it was like that. Yeah. People wanted to know and get on board and everything. The healing, there were several things that happened throughout that made a big difference. There were a couple instances where I was genuinely worried that I was going to make it. The Ozarks, I had a very scary day where I was running low on water, and I'd rationed it, but it was so hot. It was 108, but the feels like was in the 110s that day. I took a screenshot on my phone. Like, this isn't real life. I was screaming at gnats. Like, I thought I was losing my mind. I definitely had heat exhaustion for sure. And I poured what was left of my water over my head and smacked myself in the face a few times, literally. And I was just yelling at myself as I got, to this next town. I made it to the next town. Honestly, I really was worried about making it that day. And when I got there, I can't wipe the smile off my face even now. Just knowing I'd been through that and made it through, and that I made it to that town, it was the most exhilarating rush ever. And then I got sad thinking, is it really going to take this for me to feel that, you know? Like, can I just feel that after like a really good photography shoot or something? Yeah,
like you got to turn it up to 11.
Like, I didn't burn my toast today. Right. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, is it really going to take this? But that really was that was very exhilarating. That I could still the climbs up the mountains. There was one that came out of Hater's Gap, it's called, and appropriately named. And it was a 3.8 miles, but only 3.8 miles long, but it was a 1,500-foot climb. So it was, well, not straight up. I don't want to exaggerate, but I mean, it was really intense climb. And it was the first big climb like that. And I did not stop or walk once. And I think that's when I first realized physically, like, I can make my mind control my body again instead of the other way around. I was getting so down about my physical limitations. Yeah. And
that's a huge
the daily pain. And it's like, my God, I just destroyed myself, and I feel great and I don't hurt. Like, it was cycling is beautiful like that. I mean, even if you have these ailments or limitations or whatever, it's no impact, and it's lighter on you. Even when you're doing stuff like that, I mean, you can work through that, sort of pain where it doesn't become overwhelming and you fail. And so much of the climbs were mental. So I had to dig into the mental. And with me, sometimes if it gets extremely difficult, I'll just start cracking up, like, just because of how preposterous, how ludicrous the situation is, and I'm doing it, and it just cracks me up, and that gives me my own second win in a way. And so these things would happen on these inclines. I described them as like a death and rebirth. You kind of kill yourself going up, and then it's like a reincarnation on the way down or something. I said the inclines are littered with discarded demons, and then the declines are tears of liberation. Like, that's exactly how it felt.
Cool.
It was like that. I'm just gonna use my demons to earn my wings here.
How is your pain now?
It's, now that I'm not cycling every day, it's creeping in. So I'm trying to be...
cycling keeps it at bay.
It does. Yeah, you build some muscle, like a muscle base. You don't have to use heavy weights. If someone's struggling with a lot of chronic pain and joint issues or muscle issues, cycling really is a great way to stay active and everything without overexerting or further injuring yourself, and building that muscle base slowly.
What is your relationship with cycling going to look like now?
Oh, I miss it. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't want to go so far as to say I get it, because I have only been doing it for so long. I don't want to, like, people have been doing this their whole lives, and I say they get it. There's a reason. I'm starting to fully understand the therapy. It's very therapeutic. Mm-hmm. I'm really starting to appreciate and comprehend the healing and the push that comes with it, and that you get that solitude while being active. So it's like the healthiest way to really kind of take some time for yourself and take in nature. And
you should think about starting like a century ride for veterans, or trying to introduce cycling to veterans. I mean, I presume you've already thought about these things with the venture that you're launching, but
one of the activities, cycling would be it. I love the idea of a century ride, because I did one century ride on my trip, and I just felt like Wonder Woman or something. I was just seeing those triple digits. There are some places around Nashville I could do that, or really anywhere. I'm looking into doing some outings, all over the country. I know there's one in particular. This one pass I went over in Colorado called Monarch Pass. It was the highest point on the route, and that was a doozy. And that view at the top was just breathtaking. Yeah. What was left of your breath, the air's a little thin up there, but it just sucks the rest out of you. It's literally breathtaking, this view. And there's a gondola that takes you to the very tip of it. I would love to take a group of veterans up and over that thing. That would be wonderful. That's for cool. them, and for me too. Yeah. But as far as the healing, I would say the handful of days where I didn't know if I was gonna make it, and then the people. It was the people, and not just veterans, just everybody. It was everybody. I don't think I really had a negative encounter with someone I met while on the journey that I can think of. And no moment where you thought you were unsafe, or there was one moment. I was going to arrive at what I thought was a campground, and it ended up really just being a trailhead with a picnic table. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll find a little patch of flat land. And it was a very remote side road. Like no one should be back there. Like a meth lab back there or something. No, well, this SUV, like super sketchy SUV went by, and it was pretty beat up and everything. And I got a bad feeling about it. So they started to circle around to a main road to come back around. And I took off on my bike through the woods to this other road and cut through to this other road and continued on my route. So I like totally lost them. But they were definitely coming back, probably to see if I was the only one there, which I was. And having traveled a lot or part of it alone, everyone was asking, do you carry a handgun or a gun? I didn't actually carry one. I had pepper spray and 2 knives. And so the pepper spray would slow them down. And then if I absolutely have to use my knife, I totally know how, but I didn't even come close. You can avoid a lot of situations, honestly, if you with forethought, really, and especially probably I definitely have the military to thank for thinking like that, and I love that it came in handy, because I did avoid a lot of things too, just by cutting conversations short, or not going in somewhere, or getting out of somewhere. That hypervigilance kind of comes into play. Because I read body language, facial expressions, inflection, voices, all that comes into play. So it really did come in handy, and I loved that I had to use it. It's cool that the ride ended up getting a bunch of attention too. Because when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, well, this must have been something you planned for a long time, and there was a whole bunch of energy about what you were going to do before you started. But it's like, no, you just bought a bike and like basically started riding it. You've generated all this interest out of what you've done, bicycling
magazine wrote a great article. There was the New York Times thing, and a bunch of stuff out there if you just poke around the internet, and those cool videos from the news crews that were there when you finished in San Francisco.
Yes.
So it must be wild for you because you were kind of just doing this for your own personal healing, right?
Mm-hmm. It was definitely wild for me. I wasn't doing it for any kind of spotlight, really.
Right.
I actually didn't even know really how to go about making it like that. I just I made I called it a vicious cycle. I made a logo. I wanted people to know what I was doing. I made paracord bracelets to fund the journey initially. So by wanting them to know what I was doing, I basically made a post on Facebook. I'm hand making and selling these paracord bracelets. If you know anyone that would like to buy one, that would be awesome. I don't want free money, I sold them for like $20 each and made 300 something of them. And so I think through my Facebook page is how like the New York Times contacted me, and I asked them how they heard about it, and they just replied with the Facebook page. Wow. I still don't know exactly. Right. And so some of the news, it's just kind of been a whirlwind in a way. I mean, the message is important, and I've decided early on to welcome anything like that, because this journey did help me, and I know that talking about the issues along the way and publicly, to the news and everything is making a difference. I mean, if this has inspired even one other veteran to go out and do something like this rather than take their own life, like that's enough for me.
Yeah.
I'm so sick of us dying, honestly. So, and I didn't want to add to it, so I started this.
On that note, I want to wind this down with, like, typically in your experience, like, what are we not getting? What do we misunderstand about the veteran experience? I
think part of it, honestly, I think maybe would be sometimes putting us on a pedestal or something, or kind of viewing us as different, when really we don't want the attention necessarily. We just want to be making a difference kind of behind the scenes in a way. So maybe that is an aspect of it. Or I think just sometimes maybe key questions are ones that shouldn't probably be asked just casually. Like, did you see any body parts, or did you kill anyone, stuff like that. Just in casual conversation.
Not a good idea.
I think that's
ask those questions.
A lot of veterans are kind of avoiding that, but like the plague, and now I know as far as there's a lot of resources and more are coming into play. That's why part of my thing is contributing to the solution here. And there's a lot of new organizations and programs that are available now.
Where can people go to learn about that? Like, what are some of those?
There's a really good resource that I know of, connectingvets.org. They post a lot of different options, places to go. And it's not just call this suicide hotline. They call it the hotline like it's a 900 number or something. But they always are. They seem like they're really up to date on a lot of different options for veterans. So that's one I know of for sure. And the VFW and American Legion are already in place, and when I went around to them before I started back out, I visited as many VFWs as I could, because at that point I was like, I want to get my message out there, tell them what I'm doing. And I was completely welcomed in right away. And it wasn't just about joining or let's talk about war stuff. I mean, it was just casual fun, like lots of swearing and having a lot of laughter, and just us being how we were when we were in and things. So those are very helpful, I believe. If people,
do you think not enough veterans take advantage of those?
Yeah, definitely
opportunities?
Not. Especially veterans my age. I think they have this perceived notion that it's all.
That's like a Vietnam
grumpy
veteran thing.
Yeah, and they're going
to all these super old guys are going to be.
Yeah. And there is some of that. I mean, quite a bit of that because of this. So yeah, getting, I think, the younger veterans into VFW and American Legions and AMVETS, or, I mean, if you have a motorcycle, there's the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association. There's tons of motorcycle clubs, super patriotic, a lot of veteran run ones. So I think it just takes some putting yourself out there. I think that's the key for veterans, is to put themselves out there. And then for civilians, just maybe, I guess, just kind of being casual and treating them kind of like they're like you or something like that, instead of.
And for those civilians who happen to have veterans in their lives, whether family members or friends, what are some of the warning signs that veteran perhaps is suffering, and what is the best way to approach that with a veteran? I
think some of the warning signs would be the isolation, or maybe actually quite a bit of happiness out of nowhere for a while, something like that. Making it a point to spend important time with as many people as possible on a whim could maybe be a sign that something's coming up that's not too good.
Like they don't want to be alone, like almost in a manic way.
Oh, no, that possibly they're trying to make these quick memories and best and great times with people because they're planning maybe on doing something themselves. Right. Wow. Like signs like that.
I wouldn't have thought that. That's interesting.
Because that was kind of part of my thought process. It was visit as much family and friends as possible, send photos of me with them so that they have them, get all these things in place, things like that, so it would be the least hurtful to them. That sort of mindset. But and I've had there's been veterans that have done that sort of behavior and then followed through too, making kind of big financial decisions or really that sort of thing, big purchases, even maybe trying desperately to have that excitement or fulfillment or something, and then it probably won't work. Buying a crazy amount of stuff for helping. It's a lot to ask, but. Like, just don't give up on the person. It's so much easier to say than do, I know. But even if they're not showing much or don't seem as appreciative or thankful, a lot of times you're making the difference. I'm not encouraging an unhealthy or dangerous relationship to continue if it shouldn't. But if they know that having you as that constant, or knowing that constant's there, could be the one thing that's keeping them from ending it or doing something wild, dangerous to themselves or someone else. Right. Having a constant of some sort. And if you're that constant for a veteran, just, I hate to say hang in there, but a lot of times, if possible, or try to approach it in that way where it's like, I'm here for you, and knowing someone's there is important. Right. But I know not a lot gets accomplished just by saying that I'm there for you, but just by actually physically being present and consistently showing, that they can come to you when they're ready or confide in you, and the less pressure, the better.
You're available.
Right.
Yeah. That's really helpful. I think that's all like super important information. And we gotta wrap this up, but I just wanted to end it with saying that there are a lot of people out there who are suffering. A lot of them are suffering in silence. So if you are listening to this and you are one of those people, or there is somebody in your life that is suffering, that there is help available. Please reach out for help. Don't try to solve this problem on your own. Raise your hand, make your voice heard, seek out the resources in your community and the people that you trust, confide in them, tell them what's going on, be honest, find those resources that Sarah mentioned. I'm sure if you Google, this stuff, there's going to be plenty of things available at your fingertips, and to not do it alone. Right. The fact that 22 veterans take their lives every day is devastating. And for all of those people out there that are listening that suffer from PTSD who are not veterans, I'm speaking about you as well. And thank you for sharing your story here today. It's super inspirational. Amazing that you were able to climb out of that and now be of service to other people. I feel like you should organize a bike ride that rides up up to the U.S. Capitol, and that a group of you can have your voices be heard in Washington, D.C., so that at least at the highest level, from the top down, we're addressing and redressing this problem.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for saying that and having me. And I think once people are allowing that support to come in, it's going to be overwhelming what's in place already in your life that you might have become blind to, having fallen into a rut or a dark place. When you're at the bottom, it's hard to see what's really going on. So that's really important, because you may have convinced yourself that everyone will be okay, but they won't. They never will be the same. So,
and sometimes it is those tiny gestures that can make a huge difference, right? Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, what's next for you?
I am going to continue to focus on building my nonprofit, waypointvets.org. And I'm applying for my 501, and that's the first big step.
Right.
Aside from that,
that's like building. A whole thing, getting that.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to do it right the first time. I need to build an inventory, gear, camping, fishing, hiking, canoeing, kayaking, cycling, caving. I'm excited.
Caving. Cool.
Yes, like in caves, not like when you cave and...
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, that's cool. Like all different kinds of cool adventures.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Just adventure. Awesome. Either preferably overnight adventures where you bond over a camp at the end of the day. After an emotionally and physically taxing day, there's nothing beats just kicking back and being among like-minded, other veterans. So much healing happens from detaching in nature with other vets. I realized it firsthand. So that's definitely what I want and need to do. It's going to keep me here for sure.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you
people
so
are
much
listening
for having me.
to this, and they're falling in love with you and they want to connect with you. How do they, where should they go? To your Facebook page? Where's the best place?
Yes. I would say go ahead and go to aviciouscycle.org or waypointvets.org. I have an email, and I have a Facebook page for both also, facebook.com/aviciouscycle and /waypointvets. And I check my messages all the time. I message with veterans all the time. And it's actually very comfortable too. We just send back and forth whenever, and you could say or not say whatever. It's nice, it works. It's helped me. It's helped others. So message anytime. Cool. I will answer. So
awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
My pleasure.
And thank you for your service now.
It was an honor.
Cool. How do you feel? You feel okay?
Yeah.
You good?
Yes.
All right, cool. Awesome. Well, come back and talk to me again sometime.
If you'll have me, I would be honored.
Right. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Peace. Intense, right? For real. But thank you for taking that walk with me. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I enjoyed her. I think Sarah's doing some amazing work for our veterans, and that's inspiring. And I feel very strongly about leveraging this platform to have real conversations about mental health, which I'm becoming increasingly convinced is one of, if not the most important, the most misunderstood, poorly diagnosed, and critical predictors and factors when it comes to human suffering and human well-being. In any event, you can support Sarah's mission by visiting waypointvets.org, as well as her personal site, aviciouscycle.org. There are also Facebook pages for both, and of course, I'll put all her links up in the show notes, which are copious and comprehensive, and which you should always check out on the episode page on my website, richroll.com. You can let Sarah know what you thought about today's conversation by hitting her up on Instagram at @aviciouscycle and on Twitter at AVCSarah, Sarah with an H. If you would like to support our work here on the podcast, there are a couple ways to do just that. Tell your friends about the show or about your favorite episode. Take a screen grab, share it on social media, subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, on Google Podcasts. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and you can support us on Patreon at richroll.com/donate. I want to thank everybody who helped put on the show today. Jason Camiolo, behind the scenes production, audio engineering, show notes, interstitial music. He helps me write these scripts, all different kinds of stuff. Blake Curtis and Margot Lubin for video and editing the podcast, which you can watch on YouTube. Jessica Miranda for graphics, DK for advertiser relationships, and theme music, as always, by Anna Lemma. Thank you for the love, you guys, and the support. I will see you back here in a couple days with another great episode. Next up, we have Quest Nutrition co-founder and host of Impact Theory, Tom Bilyeu. I did Tom's show a while back. I had a great time. I'm super impressed with him as a person and what he has done with his platform. And I'm excited to flip the script and share his story with you guys in a couple days. It's a good one. Until then, much love to all of you. Please, if there's someone that you know out there who is suffering from depression or PTSD, extend a hand, offer some help, some comfort. Life is short, man, and we need all the help that we can get. Until then, peace. Namaste.